if it's not us and it's not one of our adversaries, and it may not be space aliens, then what could this non-human presence be? Where would they? You have any thoughts on where they would have come from?
Yeah, I mean, we've often, when people ask, they're from quote unquote outer space, our response is, pretty consistent. Look, they could be from outer space, inner space, or frankly, the space in between. There's a lot of options. Case in point, when I was in school, we learned about basically two fundamental kingdoms of life, and you are a plant or you're an animal, and it was the Greeks who proposed this. And it wasn't until the Renaissance and Enlightenment we discovered this entire kingdom of life form that we've been cohabitating here on the planet with all along, and that was the world of fungus. And they are neither plants nor animals; they are their own distinct life form. And if you think about this, it was only in the last 120 years that mankind actually discovered the true alpha kingdom of life on this planet. And in fact, if you take all the biomass of every plant and all the biomass of every animal and all the biomass of every fungus, add it all up together, it still doesn't add up to this hidden kingdom of life that's always been on this planet. That's the true dominant life form. And it wasn't until we could curve glass and look through a little metal tube and famously shout, little beasties, did we discover the world of microorganisms. And they're pervasive and they're everywhere. So we're always learning that, life can exist here on Earth and frankly can coexist with us all along. And maybe these things are just as natural to Earth as we are. Maybe we're at the point where technologically now we can interact with it. Or perhaps these things are maybe from underwater. Look, we've only mapped less than 10% of the ocean floor. We know more about the moon than we know about our own oceans. And I think that's important that we keep an open mind. And I've always said keep all options on the table until they're no longer on the table.
That's really interesting. So it sounds like you're leaning toward that it's an earthly presence, but it's just not plant or animal necessarily. It's not human, but it also isn't from space. Is that what you're leaning towards?
I don't know. I think this is why we need to have the conversation. We need more data. Look, we live in a fascinating universe, right? So we can only perceive with our five fundamental senses, very little. So if you can't touch it, taste it, hear it, smell it, etc., it's very hard for us to interact with nature. For example, if you look at the night skies where I live here, you can see beautiful stars. But if you look at that same part of the night sky with a radio telescope, all of a sudden now a whole reality is in front of you. You begin to see nebula. You see things in ultraviolet and infrared spectrum and a whole other reality. We only perceive a very, very narrow sliver, and we call it the electro-optical spectrum. But in real life, most of nature lies beyond that. And then you have, of course, a size issue. The universe is incredibly huge. It's 13.9. In any direction, you can see the universe's horizon to where light, basically the limitations of where light reaches our eyes, is about 13.9 billion with a B billion light years. Now you think about that, light travels at 186,000 miles per second, roughly 7.5 times around our planet in 1 second. Imagine how far it goes in a year, and then imagine how far light can travel in 13.9 billion years, right? So if you think about that scale, and then we are this infinitesimally small speck somewhere in the middle there, and the universe is actually much bigger than that, most scientists believe. If you compare us to one molecule, one hydrogen atom, which is Avogadro's number, 1 times 10 to the negative, do the math. It's roughly the same order of magnitude, meaning there's an entire universe inside every human being. And so my point being is we as humans can only interact with roughly 1 order of magnitude up or down. Otherwise, simply the universe is too big or too small.
Right.
And so there's a lot of options of what this could be. We're learning a lot now with quantum physics as well, how, we learned that space and time is flexible through Einstein. And now we're learning through quantum physics that there's this whole nother universe that operates almost what appears to be different set of rules. And yet that is how the universe works at the very, very small. So again, not to be evasive here, but there's a lot of options of what this could be. And so I'm very careful not to offer a single opinion because I don't think we really know yet.
It's interesting, too, because you mentioned the technology that they possess, where it would take one of our fighter jets, if he was to be going at top, 3,200 miles per hour, it would take him almost half the state of Ohio to take a right turn. Whereas the technology involved that we're talking about can be going 13,000 miles per hour and make a 90-degree turn.
Right.
That kind of technology is fairly impressive, and we have no idea how it works. So if they're here and they've got that kind of technology, which is so vastly beyond our own, they must be friendly, right? Because otherwise, we wouldn't be here anymore.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, yes, one could certainly argue that, but there's a flip side to the coin. We do see these UAP very interested in our nuclear capabilities and nuclear technology.
Yeah.
They can fly unimpeded over our controlled U.S. airspace. In some cases, they've been a flight safety issue. They've come very close to our naval aircraft, combat aircraft, and they have been able to disable, in some cases, our nuclear capabilities. And in Russia, it appears that they've actually been able to turn them on.
Wow.
People say they're here for friendly things and they want to stop us from blowing ourselves up. But really, there's no evidence to suggest that. In fact, if you look at it, they didn't stop us in World War II dropping the bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They didn't stop us testing atomic
Might have
weapons.
been a holiday. They might have been off.
Yeah. Well, sure. They also didn't interfere in other
Chernobyl,
nuclear
for
disasters.
instance.
They didn't help at all,
Fukushima, 3 Mile Island. Right? They didn't stop the proliferation of nuclear weapons to all these other countries. I mean,
Right.
it's hard to say that they're here for peace, but understand from a national security perspective, if you can take your civilian hat off for a second and put on your military hat. Let's just assume there's even only a 5% chance these things here are for malevolent reasons. You can't take a chance, right? So you have to do whatever you can. There's if you don't mind, gentlemen, to kind of emphasize this point for your audience. Do you gentlemen let me ask you a question. Do you lock your front door before you go to bed at night?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know what? I do too. And most of us would agree, look, you might live in a safe neighborhood, safe house, but most of us do that.
Yeah.
Some even go the next step and check your windows, make sure they're locked, and even turn the alarm system on. Let's say one morning, some Sunday morning, you come downstairs to have a nice hot cup of coffee or tea. And as you come downstairs, you see size 12 muddy boot prints in your living room carpet that were not there the night before. Now, no one's been hurt. Nothing's been taken. Nothing's out of place. But despite you locking the doors,
there's a problem.
That's right. So my question to you, is it a threat? And my response is, it could be if it wanted to be. So we should probably figure out how it's getting in.
That's a really good point.
That is a great analogy.
We are speaking to the former head of the Department of Defense's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, Lou Elizondo. We'll get back to more with him coming up in a minute.